I took the overnight custodial job at St. Jude's Memorial to pay my way through nursing school. The money was good, but the real perk was the silence. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., the bustling hospital became a ghost town. My world shrank to the hum of the floor polisher and the squeak of my sneakers on linoleum. My territory was the old wing, a part of the hospital scheduled for renovations. It was mostly administrative offices and a few long-term storage rooms. The air there always smelled different, not like antiseptic, but like dust and forgotten things. The first oddity was small. It was my third night. I was mopping the hallway outside the medical records office when I saw a light on under the door of room 314. That was weird. Room 314 was a storage room for broken equipment. I was sure I'd locked it an hour earlier. I tried the handle. It was unlocked. Pushing the door open, I saw a single, naked bulb swinging gently from the ceiling, casting crazy, dancing shadows. The room was a graveyard of old four-poles and gurneys. I shrugged, flipped the light off, and locked the door behind me. The old building was full of faulty wiring. I didn't think twice. A week later, the smells started. I'd be cleaning an empty hallway and get a sudden, overwhelming wave of a specific, sweetly metallic odor. It was the smell of old blood and iodine, a scent you never forget once you've worked in a hospital. It would appear out of nowhere and vanish just as quickly. I'd check the trash cans, thinking a bag had leaked, but find nothing. Then came the sounds. Not the usual groans and beeps, but something else. A soft, wet, dragging sound. Like something heavy being pulled slowly across the floor one room over. I'd stop, hold my breath, and listen. Nothing. Just the hum of the building. My rational mind had an answer for everything. The smells were ventilation pulling scents from the active wards. The dragging was pipes expanding and contracting. I was tired, my mind playing tricks. The pattern broke on a night I was cleaning the fourth-floor men's bathroom. I heard a voice, clear as day, from one of the stalls. A man's voice, old and raspy, whispering, "Help me, it's cold." My blood went cold. "Hello? Sir, are you okay?" I called out, my voice echoing in the tiled room. Silence. I pushed the stall door open slowly. It was empty. Spotless. But on the floor, right in the center, was a single, fresh drop of dark, crimson blood. That's when the fear truly set in. This wasn't in my head. I started carrying my phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over the speed dial for security. Every shadow seemed to twitch. Every distant echo of a door closing felt like a footstep. The climax came around 3 a.m. I was taking my break in the custodial closet, the door cracked open. That's when I heard the dragging sound again. It was closer than ever. Right outside. I peered through the crack. And I saw him. An old man, dressed in a faded, open-backed hospital gown, was shuffling down the hallway. His skin was a sickly gray, stretched tight over his bones. He was dragging one leg, and the wet sound was coming from a filthy, blood-soaked bandage wrapped around his foot, leaving a faint, smeared trail on the freshly mopped floor. He stopped, his head tilting slowly towards my door. His eyes were milky and unseeing. He shouldn't have been here. This wing was closed. There were no patients. He took a shuddering step towards my closet. Then another. His mouth opened, and that same raspy voice whispered, "There you are. I've been looking for you. It's time for my bath." I slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt, my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. I called security, my voice a hysterical whisper. "There's a patient in the old wing. 4th floor. He's not right." I heard his slow, shuffling steps stop right outside the door. A long, slow sniffing sound. Then, fingernails, brittle, yellowed fingernails, gently scratching at the metal door. Scritch. 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 Security found me 10 minutes later, curled in a corner, sobbing. The hallway was empty. There was no trail. No old man. They reviewed the cameras. The footage from the 4th floor hallway showed me mopping. Then, it showed me suddenly freezing, staring at nothing. Then running into the closet. There was no one else on the tape. Not a soul. I was put on administrative leave. A stress-related incident, they called it. I never went back. I dropped out of nursing school. I can't be in hospitals now. The smell of antiseptic makes me vomit. But that's not the end of it. Last week, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single, yellowed patient intake form from St. Jude's, dated 1978. The name was redacted. The listed ailment was septic gangrene of the lower left extremity. And scrawled in shaky handwriting at the bottom of the form, in what looked like dried, brown ink, was a message. The floor is still dirty. He's not trapped in the hospital. He never was. I think I brought him home with me. And he still wants his bath. My daughter, Chloe, was born 2 months premature. She spent the first 6 weeks of her life in the NICU at Mercy General, a tiny fighter hooked up to more wires than I knew existed. When she was finally strong enough, they moved her to the pediatric ward on the 3rd floor. Room 307. My wife, Sarah, had to go back to work, so the overnight stays fell to me. I'd sleep in the stiff recliner next to her crib, listening to the steady beep of her heart monitor like it was a lullaby. The room was a double, but the other bed was always empty. A stripped mattress, a bare nightstand. It felt like we had our own private room, a small blessing in a stressful time. The first 2 nights were peaceful. The night nurses were kind, the hallway lights were dim, and Chloe slept soundly. The 3rd night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound that shouldn't have been there. A soft, wet, sucking sound. Like a baby nursing. My eyes snapped open, and I looked over at Chloe's clear plastic crib. She was fast asleep, her little chest rising and falling evenly. The sound was coming from the other side of the room. From the empty crib. I sat up slowly, my heart thudding dully in my ears. The curtain between the beds was half drawn, casting the other crib in deep shadow. The sucking sound stopped. In its place was a new sound. A tiny, gurgling coo. The sound a happy baby makes. There was no baby in that crib. I stood up, my legs feeling like rubber. I crept across the room, the cold linoleum seeping through my socks. I peered around the curtain. The crib was empty. The mattress was still bare. But the air around it was ice cold, and it smelled. It smelled of sour milk and talcum powder, a cloying, sickly sweet scent that made my stomach turn. I told the nurse at the morning shift change. She gave me a sympathetic, tired smile. It's the stress, Dad. And the lack of sleep. Your mind plays tricks on you in these places. It's normal. She was so convincing I almost believed her. But it happened again the next night. This time, I woke to the sound of the crib's side rattling. Not a violent shake, but a gentle, rhythmic bumping, like a tiny hand was patting it. I didn't get up. I just lay there, frozen in that recliner, staring at the empty crib in the dim light until the sun came up. The descent into terror was slow. I started noticing things during the day. A small, damp patch on the stripped mattress that would be gone an hour later. A faint, tiny handprint on the window near the empty crib. The smell of sour milk would come and go, always strongest near that side of the room. One afternoon, I was alone with Chloe, feeding her a bottle. From the empty crib, I heard a tiny, whispered word. Mama. It was clear as day. A baby's voice. I dropped the bottle. It shattered on the floor, sending formula and glass shards everywhere. I scooped Chloe up, holding her tight, my entire body trembling. I demanded a room change. They were full. There was nothing they could do. The final night was the worst. I was drifting in and out of a fitful sleep when a new sound jolted me awake. It was the sound of crying. Not Chloe's strong, healthy wail. This was a weak, thin, pathetic cry. A cry of distress. It was coming from the empty crib. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see. I had to know. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and marched over to the crib, shining the beam inside. The mattress was still bare. But in the center of it, there was a depression. The exact size and shape of a small, swaddled infant. And the sheet beneath it was soaked through with a dark, yellowish fluid that smelled of sickness and decay. As I watched, horrified, the weak crying suddenly stopped. And from right behind me, from the corner of the room where the shadows were deepest, a different sound emerged. A low, gurgling, adult-sized chuckle. I didn't pack. I didn't call a nurse. I wrapped Chloe in her blanket, ran out of that room, and spent the rest of the night in the bright, public waiting room, holding my daughter so tight she started to cry. We were discharged the next morning. As I was carrying Chloe out of room 307 for the last time, I glanced back at the empty crib. The side was up. We always kept it down. I did some research later, once the paralyzing fear had receded enough to let me function. I looked up the history of Mercy General's pediatric ward. It took weeks, but I found a single, brief mention in a digitized newspaper archive from 1981. A baby boy, admitted for failure to thrive, had died in room 307. The cause was listed as sudden infant death syndrome. The mother was later committed to a psychiatric institution. She claimed a shadow in the room had stolen her baby's breath. She said it would whisper to him, mimicking her voice, until he just stopped. Chloe is a healthy toddler now. But she's terrified of the dark. She points at corners and whimpers. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I'll wake up to the faint, unmistakable smell of sour milk coming from her nursery. I'll run in, my heart in my throat, and she'll be sleeping peacefully. But her mobile will be spinning slowly, even though I never wound it. I know we didn't leave it behind in that hospital room. We brought a piece of it home with us. And it's still hungry. I was a third-year medical resident, and the 24-hour shifts in the ICU were a brutal rite of passage. You function on caffeine and pure adrenaline, your world reduced to the glow of monitors and the smell of sanitizer. It was during one of these marathon shifts, around 3 a.m., that I was assigned a new patient. Room 734. His name was John Doe. He'd been found unconscious in an alley, no ID, and had been admitted in a coma. The file was thin. Unexplained neurological trauma. Stable, but unresponsive. My job was to do hourly checks. He was an older man, with a gaunt face and a full head of startlingly white hair. He looked peaceful, like he was just sleeping. But the moment I entered his room, the air felt heavy, thick. It smelled of ozone and something else, something like burnt hair. The first check was normal. The second, too. On my third check, as I was shining my penlight into his unseeing eyes, his heart monitor skipped a single beat. Beep, beep. Then it resumed its normal rhythm. I frowned, making a note. Probably a loose lead. It happens. Mr. Doe? Can you hear me? I asked. His eyes remained closed. But his lips, chapped and pale, didn't move. The voice came again, not from his mouth, but from the air around him, a whisper that seemed to vibrate in my own skull. Not him. Me. He's trapping me. A cold dread, sharper than any fatigue, shot down my spine. I backed out of the room and called my senior resident. He chuckled, told me I was hallucinating from lack of sleep, and ordered me to grab a coffee. The rational part of my brain clung to that. Hallucinations. It had to be. But the terror was real. My checks on 734 became an exercise in pure dread. The whispers continued, each one more desperate. My name is Arthur. He took my life, now he takes my body. Don't let him, wake up. It was on my fourth check that things shifted. I was charting at the nurse's station just outside his room when I heard it. A voice, raspy and dry, from his room. Help, I rushed in. Me. John Doe was exactly as I'd left him, still and silent. The monitors showed no change, but the smell of burnt hair was stronger. I stood over him, my own heart pounding. Had I imagined it? Sleep deprivation does strange things. Mr. Doe? Can you hear me? I asked. His eyes remained closed, but his lips, chapped and pale, didn't move. The voice came again, not from his mouth, but from the air around him, a whisper that seemed to vibrate in my own skull. Not him. Me. He's trapping me. A cold dread, sharper than any fatigue, shot down my spine. I backed out of the room and called my senior resident. He chuckled, told me I was hallucinating from lack of sleep, and ordered me to grab a coffee. The rational part of my brain clung to that. Hallucinations. It had to be. But the terror was real. My checks on 734 became an exercise in pure dread. The whispers continued, each one more desperate. My name is Arthur. He took my life, now he takes my body. Don't let him, wake up. The physiological signs started to become impossible to ignore. The room would drop 10 degrees the moment I entered. The monitors would flicker. And the smell of ozone and burning became a permanent fixture, clinging to my scrubs. The breaking point came on my final check before morning rounds. I was documenting his pupil response when his hand, lying limp on the sheet, suddenly twitched. Then, his index finger slowly, deliberately, curled, pointing directly at me. And the voice in my head wasn't a whisper this time. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. He's awake. Run. I stumbled back, crashing into the four-pole. The heart monitor began to shriek, not the flat line of death, but the frantic, rapid beeping of a heart going into a lethal arrhythmia. Alarms blared through the unit. As nurses and code team members flooded the room, John Doe's eyes snapped open. They were not the eyes of a comatose old man. They were pitch black, from corner to corner, and they held a chilling, ancient intelligence. They locked onto mine. And his lips stretched into a wide, impossibly long smile, filled with teeth that were too sharp, too numerous. They worked on him for 20 minutes before calling it. The official cause was a massive cerebral hemorrhage. I was debriefed, given a week of administrative leave for extreme burnout. I never went back to medicine. The cost was too high. But that's not the end. A few months ago, I was browsing a missing persons website, a morbid habit I've developed. I froze. There he was. A man named Arthur Bell, missing for 5 years. A kind-faced man with a head of startlingly white hair. The photo was a perfect match for my John Doe. Last week, I received a letter. No postmark. It was a single, crisp white card. On it, in elegant, old-fashioned handwriting, was a message. A vessel requires a skilled pilot. Thank you for your assistance. The door is open now. I live in constant fear now. Not of ghosts or monsters, but of something far worse. I fear the slow, methodical process of a predator finding a new home. I check the locks on my doors 3, 4, 5 times a night. And every time I see an elderly man with white hair on the street, my blood runs cold. Because I know with a certainty that chills my soul that John Doe didn't die in that hospital bed. Something else was born in it. And it's out there now. Walking. Hunting. And it remembers the young doctor who stood by and watched it wake up.